The Sailor Realo, released in 2006, this is the only piston-filling fountain pen that Sailor makes. It's currently offered in burgundy and black, as well as rounded and flat finials like we see here today. The top finial features the anchor-style logo for Sailor, and it's separated from the cap with a single metal band. We then have a bent metal clip, which is springy and functional. The cap has a gradual taper down, widening to a two-piece cap band, which reads Sailor, Japan, founded 1911. Below the cap band, we have a little bit of exposed plastic, which tapers down to the barrel. And the cap comes off very smoothly in 1, 2, and about a half turns to reveal a beautiful 21 karat gold nib. It has rhodium color scrollwork on the outside, and in the middle it reads 1911. It has the anchor logo, 21K 875, denoting a 87.5% gold content, and then Sailor. And on the side, we can see the size of the tipping material. I have this one in a hard broad, which is abbreviated HB. And on the back, we can see the black plastic feed. The section starts with a flare-up, and then it has a tapering portion to a metal band, followed by threads that are smooth to the touch, and they have a tapering profile that transitions smoothly to the barrel. The barrel starts with a very prominent ink window that's framed with two metal bands, and then the barrel has a tapering portion going down to another band, and that taper continues into the end finial, which has a flat edge. The end finial, if you give it a twist, it starts unscrewing, which activates a piston rod. If I rotate the piston rod in the opposite direction, it will draw up ink. And that piston rod moves very smoothly. In the hand, the pen is extremely well balanced and it has decent heft, but it is also fairly short. If you have smaller hands, this would be comfortable for long writing sessions, but medium or larger hands may find it a little bit too short. And luckily, that cap posts deeply and securely. It transfers the weight just about to the crook of my hand, and posted, it's an extremely comfortable pen to use for long writing sessions. In terms of size comparisons, here's the Sailor Realo, a typical Pilot G2 rollerball pen, and your standard Sharpie. Before we get into the disassembly of the Sailor Realo, I wanted to take a moment here to compare it with a few other fountain pens. Up top, we have the Lamy 2000, which is another high-end piston-filling fountain pen. This one is primarily made out of a polycarbonate called Macrolon. Down below, we have the Pilot Custom 823, which is a very popular vacuum-filling fountain pen made by Pilot. And at the bottom, I have a Jinhao 82. This is acting as a stand-in for a Pro Gear Slim. I don't currently own that model. We can see in their cap forms, the Realo is significantly longer than the Pro Gear Slim or Jinhao 82, and it's just a little bit shorter than the Lamy 2000. The 823, on the other hand, is significantly longer than the rest of the pens. The Lamy 2000 is the only one with a spring-loaded clip. The rest have bent metal clips. Let's take a look at these pens with their caps removed. The Lamy 2000 is the only pen that has a pull-off cap. And uncapped, we can see the Jinhao 82 is still the shortest of the pens, followed closely by the Sailor Realo, and then the Lamy 2000, and the longest pen by far is the Custom 823. The Sailor Realo has the most prominent ink window. The Custom 823 has a translucent body. The Jinhao 82 has a translucent body as well, but it's also offered with opaque and fully transparent models. And the Lamy 2000 has a very subtle ink window right here. Let's take a closer look at these nibs. The Lamy 2000 has a semi-hooded 14 karat gold nib. The Realo has a fully exposed 21 karat gold nib. The Custom 823 has a fully exposed 14 karat gold nib. and the Jinhao 82 has a fully exposed stainless steel nib. The sections of these three pans are widely similar, though I would say the Realo has the most dramatic taper of the bunch. And the Lamy 2000 has a very streamlined design with a taper going back to the barrel and no flare up at the top. Let's take a look at these pens with their caps posted. All caps post deeply and securely, and in their posted form, the Jinhao 82 is the shortest, followed by the Realo, and the Lamy 2000 is just a little bit longer than the Realo, and the custom 823 is the longest of the bunch. To disassemble the Sailor Realo, you are going to need some gripping materials and a wrench. And I found that this multi-wrench by Asvine fits it pretty perfectly. The cap unscrews. And if we take a look inside, we can see that there is a cap liner, but it appears to be riveted in place, so I don't recommend removing this. And if you want to clean it, I just recommend running this under warm water. The section unscrews from the barrel. And the section can be pulled off of the nib collar. And then to remove the nib and feed, we need to grab a hold of it with our gripping materials and give it a pull. At this point, the nib and feed can be separated. And then if you want to remove the piston filler, I don't recommend doing this on a regular basis, but sometimes you might need to for maintenance. Unscrew the back finial, and doing so will reveal two flats. We'll grab a hold of those flats with our Asvine wrench and screw the finial down on top of that. And then carefully give it a counterclockwise turn. Pretty soon, the piston unit will come out of the barrel. And then if you want, you can continue unscrewing the piston knob to take the piston out. And then we have a trim ring. Continuing to unscrew the piston knob. Again, I don't think you need to do this for regular maintenance, but I want to show you that it can be done. We'll remove the piston knob itself, as well as a collar and a key. And at this point, the pen is fully disassembled. To reassemble, we're going to start with the piston unit. I'll grab a hold of the collar and the key. The key just gets placed right on top. And then we will grab our piston knob and screw that down. Followed by our trim ring. And if you look, it does have a slight tapering profile. You want to have the smaller diameter towards the piston knob. And then we'll grab our piston and insert that into this assembly. And what we're looking for as we screw this down is for the piston knob to butt up against this first flange when the piston is fully retracted. So it looks like we have a decent amount of gap there. I'm going to remove the piston and rotate the piston knob a little bit further back so that it has more room to move. That looks just about perfect. We'll then grab our barrel and insert this into that. Give it a clockwise turn. And then we're going to back it off a little bit. Grab our Asvine wrench. Grab a hold of the flats on the bottom. Tighten it down and just give it a slight tightening. We'll back it off. And at this point, the piston should be fully functional. That looks great. Next, we'll reinstall our nib and feed. I'm going to start with our feed and the collar. The collar is keyed, so we want to line it up, and in one orientation, it should go further in. There we go. And then we'll slide our nib on top of that, be sure to try and line it up the best you can. There is a ridge on the back of the feed, so the nib can't be installed too deeply. There it goes. Next, we'll grab our section, and the section also has a key, so it can only go in one direction. And then we'll screw that onto the front of our barrel. And just make that finger tight. And then we'll cap up our pen. And we're ready to ink up. Inking up the Sailor Realo, today I selected Waterman Tender Purple, which is a nicely saturated purple ink. I'll remove the cap from the bottle as well as the pen. Extend the piston all the way down. Submerge the nib into ink and drop the piston. In order to get a full fill, I'm going to extend the piston one more time and then draw it back up. That looks like a nice full fill. I'll go ahead and wipe off the excess ink. Cap up our bottle. And our pen. And we're ready to write. Okay, writing with the Sailor Realo, cap and screws, and I am going to post it. And today we are writing with a 21 karat gold hard broad. And I really like this nib. It's very well tuned, it has a little bit of bounce, but also it has a bit of feedback, which is somewhat rare when you're dealing with broad gold nibs. Typically, they are a little bit numb to write with, and this one gives you a decent amount of feedback so that you know that you are touching the page and you can tell what kind of paper you're writing on. Our ink, again, is Waterman Tender Purple. For flex, I'm going to turn the page. You can actually push out a little bit of line variation with this nib, even though it is called a hard broad, so that's kind of surprising. And for reverse writing. Extremely scratchy. It feels like I'm tearing up the page. Thinner line though, but oh no, definitely not a pen that I would consider reverse writing with. You could go light or you could go heavy to get some line variation, but don't flip the nib upside down. So, what do I think of the Sailor Realo? I really like this pen. I find it to be extremely comfortable. I think that the threads having this kind of tapering profile makes it so that I can hold the pen comfortably all the way back here or up by the nib. Also, even though it is a little bit short, the cap posts beautifully and it makes for a very comfortable and well-balanced pen. Not only do the threads feel nice, the piston filling system also operates very smoothly, and the overall materials and build quality on this pen feel really exceptional. I am also a big fan of this nib. Yes, it is a broad nib, but as I mentioned, it's a broad with a bit of feedback, and I'm surprised to say that I actually really like that because typically broad nibs, especially gold ones, are a little bit numb to the page. So this is a nice change. And the ink window I actually really like. I think that it might be a little bit divisive because it is a standout feature and not very well concealed, but it's effective, and I like the fact that Sailor decided to embrace the ink window and make it visible even when the pen is capped. Now, in terms of areas to improve with this pen, I already mentioned a few. I think that the ink window might be a little bit divisive. Some people might not like the look of that. Also, the pen is a little bit short in the hand. If you have short hands, it might be perfectly fine, but medium or larger hands are going to want to post the cap. And that's okay because the cap does post beautifully. Also, another area for improvement with this pen, and it's maybe just a personal preference of mine, I don't really like that the finials aren't very symmetrical. This one is really tapering down, whereas this one is kind of squared off. And in my mind, it doesn't quite look balanced or finished. It almost looks like a ballpoint pen if I were to hold it in this way. But with that being said, this design does enable that deep posting, so I guess it's kind of a take it or leave it situation. And then another big area for improvement for me is the ease of disassembling this pen. It's not very easy. The section being removed isn't too bad, but I don't know if you caught that. There's actually an O-ring that's loose inside this barrel. That O-ring fell off of the nib collar and I didn't notice it. But luckily I do silicone grease this pen quite a bit, so I'm not having any leakage issues. But also, like the nib and feed, those were extremely tight to get into the nib collar, and there isn't a disassembly tool to remove this piston. The Asvine wrench that I found, that's aftermarket and just by happy accident is able to fit it. But probably the biggest area for improvement with this pen is, unfortunately, the cost. Yes, it is a very premium pen, 21 karat gold nib, exceptional materials and build quality, but it's also the only piston filler that Sailor makes, and piston fillers are really popular on this market, so having a pen at this price point for the only piston filler is really a miss in my opinion. I think it would make more sense if Sailor reduced the cost of this pen, maybe introduce this with a stainless steel nib, and try to get it down to a sub 100 US dollar price point. I think then Sailor would really have a winner on their hands and a really nice seller. But with all that being said, I do really love this pen. As I mentioned, the build quality is great. The nib is outstanding performance. The piston functions beautifully, and it is just a nice, distinctive pen to have in my collection. And that just leaves me to say, thank you for watching.